some old cards from my dad. He had no sons, and I have the grandson, only grandson. I got this box of stuff. I used to have French cups on a blouse, and so I used to wear my dad's cup. I took out gold squares with a diamond chip in it.
I've got a jar of it, but my crackers have little bugs in them.
How delightful. I didn't pay attention.
Are you all ready to go here? Doesn't matter, we are. Deborah Lutsky, are you here, Deborah? I guess if I had been professional, I would have warned you you were first on deck when we resumed, but it was fortunate you were here.
Good afternoon. Hopefully I won't put anybody to sleep since we all just had lunch. Thank you, Chair, board members, for allowing me to come back up and speak. I also wanted to take the time to thank staff. They've done an incredible job. They've really been willing and hardworking and dedicated, so it means a lot to the community that we've been able to work with such great people. My comments are few. My first one is that just during the last comment period, we submitted comments on portions of the permit that were not in track changes with the goal of good governance. We believe that our comments will help provide some additional understanding and help the regulated community with some clarity, and we understand that those comments were not accepted because only track changes were allowed. We think it's really important that since the permit will be adopted as a whole permit, that it not be looked at as piecemeal, so these comments would be put into the record and we'd be able to get responses to those comments. Also, we think that time frame, the turnaround's been really quick, and that we don't think that there's been ample time for staff to be able to address comments and us to have what we think is a viable working conversation, since everything's really come up against this board hearing today. We would just hope that we could have an additional conversation and be able to look at the permit holistically rather than just the track changes component.
Deborah, it seems like we've been looking at this permit for the last 7 years. I know it hasn't been that long because Christine and Allie weren't out of school yet, but maybe you too. It's a compliment.
Thank you. There were just a couple of things that we noticed that we wanted clarification on. The concentration range for hardness, color and surfactants holding time. There were some issues with actually taking these samples in the field and making sure that we were within the confines of the permit and we were complying. And they weren't able to address our comments because I think the goal was to not look at other parts of the permit, but we think that it would be very helpful for the regulated community to have some guidance in these areas. They were in the comment letter that we submitted, but they didn't make it into the response to comments document.
What was the governance issue that you?
We just think that it's good government if we can look at the whole permit and not just pieces.
Oh, I see.
We just think that it would benefit the whole community, that, you know, if you take a second look and if things may change from community based on new words being added or new capture points. So we wanted to make sure that we could bring these comments forward and have them addressed. Thank you.
I appreciate the comment, but I think I would say that we do look at the permit as a whole every time it appears before us as a draft. But there's a limit to how many times we can revisit the same issues and the same suggested changes when no additional information has been provided. So while I appreciate that concern, and I'm sure others share that concern, I'm very comfortable with saying that with each iteration of the permit, we do look at the permit as a whole, but we want the comments to be focused on the changes that are being progressively made in each draft. It's a matter of efficiency, but I'm sure staff as well as the board members do look at the permit as a whole.
If I can clarify, this permit has had 3 drafts go out for public comment. The first was a full draft for public comment. The second was significant revisions, so we put the full draft again for public comment. The third draft, we asked for comments only on changes made to that second draft, which we had, and we released the response to comments on that draft along or shortly after we put out the third draft.
But issues like the concentration time, the hardness issues, are those, if those didn't get addressed, what do they do? If they've got questions, don't they just call you?
Right. I assume they did get addressed in a response to comments on
Right.
the earlier drafts,
Okay.
because if
I
we were
don't remember.
if we weren't allowing additional comments on them, it's because they were in the draft, the prior draft
Okay.
that was circulated. I'm not familiar with that particular issue, but
Okay.
there should be responses.
Mr. Lucas.
Thank you. My name is Bob Lucas. I'm here representing the California Council for Environmental and Economic Balance, and I'd like to join the chorus of saying thank you to the staff. We had a rather complex comment letter prepared and delivered in December, and by virtue of conversations since the last workshop, we've worked through virtually all of the issues. Janine, if I may, thank you. I listened to your comment before, Tam. Hopefully something's going to show up. There we are. There's only 2 slides. This is just the general introductory one. We did want to point out that one of the items that we had asked for a revision on was the MS4 inspection requirements related to the rainy season for these linear projects because of the length of the projects. The staff decided that they had their own reasons for wanting to keep the language as it was, and they did agree to address our situations in an FAQ. So we anticipate to work with the staff on that. And then when the staff gave its presentation earlier today, it said that one of the items that changed in the comment letter, or the comment sheet, excuse me, the change sheet, was changing references to utilities to LUPs. I just want to point out, oops, in any event. Jenny, can you help me with that? Thank you. I just wanted to point out that there was one reference of utilities. It shows up in the change sheet on the first page in the second large paragraph labeled, it's finding 39. 2/3 of the way down, there's the word utilities. We'd like that changed to LUPs for consistency purposes. We think it was just an oversight. This is the sentence that word shows up in. I just want to let you know the full context is already in the change sheet.
From all
Okay.
the nodding heads I saw, Bob, I think he won that one.
Thanks. That was a hard ask, I know.
It was just an oversight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
They just had to leave something out to make sure you were paying attention.
Dominic Rogues.
So good afternoon, Chairman Hoppen and members of the board. I'm Dominic Rock with the Central Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board, and on behalf of the staff and the board members in the Region 3, I'm here to say that we support your action to adopt the draft order. Specifically, we strongly support the language that would enable the Central Coast region to implement the post-construction requirements that we developed based on our assessment of watershed processes in our region and through an extensive stakeholder project or process. And we strongly support the provisions of E1B, which allow municipalities to identify and continue implementation of the best management practices that are targeted toward local water quality problems. We feel like these provisions are a straightforward approach for maintaining progress that the municipalities have made under their current programs to protect water quality. And we think that the order signifies the Water Board's recognition and even an embrace of the watershed process-based approach to stormwater management. And we think that this strategy and this approach will begin to deliver improvements to urban water quality during the implementation, this round of implementation of the order. We also want to commend your staff, as everyone has, for the considerable effort that they've made to develop a clear, enforceable permit and to work with all the stakeholders, including us at the regional board. We stand ready to work with your staff to learn what we can and share what we've learned, trying to implement a watershed-based approach. And if during the course of the hearing you have any questions you want to ask me, I'm around. And with that, thank you.
Thank you, Dominic. Jason, Holly?
Thank you, Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for having me, and congratulations to you, Chairman, on pending retirement. I hope someday to be in those shoes as well. Not anytime soon, unfortunately.
The problem with retirement, along with it comes old age, so.
That I don't wish on anyone. I also want to thank board staff. I've been able to interact with them through the duration of this permit. I found them very responsive, very professional, and we always aren't seeing eye to eye on some of the issues. I've been appreciative of their efforts, so their hard work should be commended. My name is Jason Hawley. I'm with the City of Napa. I want to also mention Mr. Moore and Ms. Marcus. I appreciated your remarks about being on the offense and not being too much on the defense and striking a balance. It's something that's near and dear to us in our hearts, and I have 2 points I want to make today, and they're really big picture policy concerns we have at the City of Napa. I want to start by inviting you on a trip to Napa with me, at least metaphorically, unless you actually want to visit, because we're a great area known for our hospitality. But if you can travel with me just real quickly, I want to show you not just the world-famous wine grape growing region that we are. I also want to show you our award-winning flood protection project. It's the Napa River, Napa Creek Flood Protection Project. It's part of a $500 million collaboration with the Army Corps of Engineers and our flood control district.
I think we ponied up a little bit of money on that ourselves.
That's true.
According to the bend in my shoulder from Congressman Thompson.
Yeah.
That's true. There have been many partners and many different
And regional
agencies.
board have been pivotal working with the Corps.
Especially,
When
yes.
we give you money, you got to give us a little credit or your SOL the next time.
Hey, I gave money at EPA, too.
Everybody's been a part of this, and I apologize if I've left anyone out. What I wanted to show, if you haven't seen it, we're about halfway done with that. We've got another 10 years to go and probably about another $500 million before we get it done. But what we've done to date is restore thousands of acres of floodplain and marshplain terraces on the south end of town and floodplain terraces all throughout the east bank of the river. Now we removed literally hundreds of point source polluters from the banks of the river. We started this project in 1998 and continue with it on now, and will continue into the future. And that project, as you know, is really at the vanguard of environmentally responsible flood protections. It serves as the Corps' model nationwide now on how to do flood protection. We fought for years with the Corps about what that project was going to look like. We did not want the LA Channel in Napa. We wanted something better, and we finally got it with y'all's help, and we appreciate that. What that project demonstrates is that in Napa, we've already achieved a lifetime of water quality goals and objectives to date with the project we've done, and moving forward when we complete that project, we will have achieved far more goals and far more objectives that could ever be accomplished in any municipal permit, either the one we just are done with or this next one. And we have concerns about having to divert resources to comply with this permit and take away focus on completing that project. There are limited amounts of resources we can focus on water quality goals. Our local taxpayers have actually upped local monies as well, a local sales tax to pay for part of that initiative. One of the other things that we have in Napa you may not be aware of is our land use regulations, which are also a model that serves nationwide as far as preventing sprawl, urban sprawl. For 3 decades, Napa has been on the offensive, preventing urban sprawl and all of the pollution that comes with it, along water quality pollution, but other kinds of pollution as well. That land use policy is being threatened by some of the parts of this permit, and I'm talking specifically Permit E12 that relates to post-construction standards. The requirement that we retain on site certain volumes of water may not work in Napa, and the reason it doesn't work is twofold, because we develop at 2 acres at a time, 1 acre at a time. We don't sprawl outside our boundaries, and so setting aside land for retention goes at the heart of the problem about being also setting aside land for housing sites, which we're required to by HCD. So our general plan has identified housing sites, and if we can't carve up these little 2 and 1 acre infill sites and we have to set aside land for retention, we're going to be undermining our housing policy, and we really threaten those, and we're very, very concerned about that. We also don't think there's been any kind of CEQA analysis on that perspective, and we think there has to be. If we're going to be undermining land use policy, we think CEQA analysis has to be done, especially as to the loss of housing sites that may happen. What I would like to propose is that the City of Napa be exempted from this permit, and I have some language. Section 6 of the fact sheet had a bunch of strikeouts from it. I think the City of Napa could be listed as one of those entities that could go to the regional board and get an evaluation on the continuance of the coverage and continuing of our existing permit based on unique conditions that we have with our flood project and our land use policies. Nowhere else in the state is like what we do. There is a reason we'd be inconsistent with the rest of the permits because there is no other similar example in the state. So
Are you going to annex Sonoma into your town to get over 100,000 people, or how are you going to do that?
are we going to?
Are you going to annex Sonoma into Napa so we get over the small MS4 threshold?
No, what I'm proposing actually is that the renewal permittee language that was stricken out be added back in, and to allow Napa to consult with our regional board, who has a much bigger or a much better positioned to understand our local constraints and our local policy. They've been so involved with our flood project and our land use initiatives. So that's one of our requests. I'll also make just a quick point on the unfunded mandate issue. I'm not going to rehash this. We have a different position than what the state board staff has positioned about the unfunded mandate nature of the costs and the programs that are above and beyond what are required by the federal government. So we're going to renew our comments for the record that we think the permit as is constitutes an unfunded mandate, and there should be a funding source identified before we move forward with this permit. So I thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Jason.
Count-
I am so tempted to tell a story that goes along with your flood project, but I don't think it would be appropriate, and it's not any reflection on you or the flood project. It was just a strange situation I found myself in one day. Ava Butler, I can't tell you.
No, I just had a question. I mean, I think part of the alternative path and the smart growth stuff is stuff you should be able to go to the regional board and make the case, and they're more appropriately the ones to make a decision about the impact of what you're doing than we are from here and giving you an exemption. That's why we put it there.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Hoppen and the board. Thank you for having me. My name is Eva Butler. I am the founder and currently the program director of Sacramento Splash. So I'm here today. I know there's language in this permit related to how we do the education about stormwater, and I've wondered if you'd indulge me for just a few minutes to kind of update you on why we believe this is what we do at Splash is a model for what other communities could do, and this influences a little bit perhaps where you go with your permit language. I don't know if other organizations or other stormwater quality programming was done the way we did it in Sacramento, but the permittees in our area decided to come together and form a consortium to develop a watershed education program. That was around '99. And I know before I got involved, they had hired and fired a couple of consultants who claimed they could do a watershed program but couldn't pull it off. And in retrospect, what I see is that what I brought to this, in addition to, being a scientist and in the water quality business, was a real understanding of the schools and what the needs were in the schools. And I think collectively what we saw was the opportunity to use the dollars that go into stormwater education and enhance that education so it actually delivers good science education to kids and deals with a lot of the things that teachers already are trying to do in the classroom, which is create relevant content that teaches kids about the world that they live in. And a lot of the, in education in general, I think teachers struggle with how to make the lessons they teach relevant. Kids don't know about the pipes under the ground. I mean, most adults don't. And what I see is, because of this special mix that we had, this has worked incredibly well. We are expanding that to bring in other partners, other providers like FEA Nature Center, other providers of outdoor education to kind of integrate our curricula better so that we potentially, in the years ahead, can go to a school and give them a place-based experiential learning opportunity in science every year of elementary school. I think this is very feasible. But in order to do this, you know, as I look back, how would other communities be positioned to do something like this? And I feel that when I hear permittees say, well, we already have programs, we already have materials, you know, don't make us start over, I would really challenge people to look at what are those materials. And at a time when there was a permit requirement to make something, I think people did the best they could to make something. I just recently was, I guess, upgrading some materials for one of Splash's clients, and I saw that, you know, the bar was pretty low there for a long time. So I went out kind of into the world to see what other great stormwater, water quality materials had been produced, because why would we start over? You know, why reinvent the wheel? And I have to say, I mean, I was really sort of shocked to see that the materials that I was finding clearly did not have many educators involved. They had a lot of graphic artists. But the content of those really cool brochures and things that I would love to have put in the kids' activity packet, the educator in me and the scientist in me said, actually, you know, that's really not good enough for the kids. We can do better. For the same money, we can deliver really good stuff. So while I'm not saying that everybody needs to do this, I think that, you know, in the language where you say, you know, that you shall work with grassroots organizations that know how to deliver, are already in the classroom, why not really press people to do that? Because if we stay in the status quo, there are a lot of materials that look and feel like they're doing education, but there isn't a mechanism to get those to kids. You can drop them off at schools, you can convince teachers maybe to come in and load this stuff on them, but they're not there looking for more things to do. You know, it is basically, while valuable to know, it is our propaganda. It is the stuff we want kids to know to change their behavior. And if we don't integrate that with other stuff that they really need to learn to do, like reading and math and science, then we just missed each other. Where we could have had a win-win, we just missed each other. So I would just encourage you as a board and staff to, if you think Splash is a model for what works, and I believe it is, then let's encourage people to go there and not just sit with what they have. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Eva. Kelly McKinley.
Good afternoon. I'll make my comments quick. I also want to congratulate you on your pending retirement, Chair Hoppen, and thank you for your service to the state on the board. We do appreciate your efforts here. And I also want to express our thanks to staff for meeting with us in a variety of stakeholder groups. The discussions at times were difficult, but I think it's a model for future permit reissuance processes. And while I'm not eager to do this again, I don't think anybody in this room is, for that matter, I would hope that we would take some notes on what worked well through the stakeholder process and put that into the record books so that next time we have to do this again, we look to that as a model, because I think it was beneficial, and where we started and where we ended up is a much different place and a much better place. So I would ask that, because I don't know if these wonderful people will be here in 5 years to do a reissuance again, or who we might be working with at that point. I do want to mention on the public outreach, thank you for the considerations that Casca mentioned. I know we just had the last speaker who talked about the need for experiential type of education, and I invite you to the City of Roseville. Come to our Utility Exploration Center. We've made a big investment in education to not only school-aged children, but also for adult learning. And we've partnered with our utilities, our water, our wastewater, our solid waste, our electric utilities in order to create this center. at one of our libraries, and we do have a lot of children coming in from all over Placer County, not just within the Roseville community. And with respect to the curriculum that's been developed, it was actually developed with educators. We had teachers that helped us prepare the materials that we distribute to children that do come through. So the concern we have as permittees is the requirement to get it into schools and make it part of their curriculum, because that's very difficult for us to do, and we really don't have the ability to influence schools to take the materials and put it into curricula. So that is really at the heart of the matter for that particular topic. And then on the last item, I think there might be a typo. I would just ask that staff look at on the site design measures on page 61, which is section E12, little e, double I, D on page 61. In the very last sentence of the new red line edition reads, any remaining runoff from impervious DMAs may then be directed to one or bioretention. And I don't know what one refers to. So if we could understand that, I would appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I think it's one or more, and the word more is missing, and we have that in our change proposals.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steph.
Thank you, Kelly. You know, Kelly, last time I was at a gathering where someone talked about someone being in a better place. I don't think it was the stormwater permit event, but
may I ask, can you help me, and again, I apologize, this is not a provision that I totally focused on, but I did spend time doing a lot of educational materials and tried to get them into the schools about 20 years ago, and because we thought it was a really important way to meet our environmental goals. But the requirement, what's the extent of the requirement? Ms. McKinley's the second person, at least, who's raised the issue of getting it into the schools and whether we're requiring them to actually see it applied as opposed to making it available and producing it. Can you just explain what the permit requires one more time on the education?
So the intent is not to direct or tell the school districts or the educators, you know, exactly what to use, but they're to assist them to get the right information about stormwater. So that's what the requirement is. So when you hear them say that we don't have jurisdiction, and no, they don't, but they can take the time and talk to them and make sure that the stormwater message is correct.
So the requirement is that they make available materials, and they do. What's the specific requirement we're actually saying in the permit that they have to do?
Yeah, so it specifically says, oh.
What's me?
thank God I was going to have to buy dinner tonight anyhow. Ooh.
So it says that they're required to provide stormwater education materials to school-age children, right? Yeah.
Well, no, there's an additional thing, which is that the issue that was raised by CASCO, which is that it goes on to say that permittees shall use environmental and place-based experiential learning, which is integrated into the school's curriculum. That's the piece that there's concern, not the first sentence.
Well, how can we? So, okay. Respond to that.
I think we're okay with making the revision to say that, you know, well, there's two options, I think. One, we could keep the shall, but then say if that isn't available, I think that the main idea, like Kelly just spoke to, is that some guys have some really good programs in place that may not be specific to that language. Right. And so we don't want those efforts to go unheard. So we could have some type of alternative where they've already established a stormwater education program that's, you know, relative to their locale or something along those lines. Otherwise, we could change the shall to a may or encourage to.
And I think the language does say equivalent at the end of it.
But I'm going back to Jonathan, what Jonathan was reading about. It seems to have an and be integrated into the school's curriculum, which is a piece that they're not in control. You obviously want them to go try and do that. It's just that not every school district, at least speaking from my experience, is as amenable as you might like. So I just want to make sure that we're getting the intent of what you're trying to get at and doing the work to try and do education, which agencies want to do, because the more the public does things behaviorally, the less problem they have. It's a key tool, but not write something that puts them in jeopardy of being in violation of something they don't have any control over.
Yeah, I think what I'm getting here is that we want to have permittees, we want to encourage permittees to furnish materials that may be integrated, as opposed to requiring the permittees to integrate. So I think I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads. I think the whole room agrees that that's where our permit should land.
That's correct. That was the intent.
Let me follow up on the first comment Kelly made, which was sort of like a lessons learned, what worked, what didn't work, how will we do this, in the future. And while staff will be busy working on the next stormwater permit, I would encourage the stakeholders who have, sweated and worked with us over the past years to put your own list together of what worked, what didn't, what suggestions would you have, and provide it to actually, since Geeta is not in the room, I'll volunteer her. Send it to Geeta Kapahi, who is our chief of the Office of Public Participation, or Tom, or anyone else for that matter. We want to learn from your experience and get your suggestions as well. So if you could do that, I think we would all appreciate it.
I would add, not just this process, but many of you work with us in other areas as well. I'm looking at Jeff. And where you think there are exemplary approaches to stakeholder involvement in the development of permits, particularly suggestions that will reduce the amount of time that it takes, although we heard earlier we should take even more time, but we're trying to look for ways to be as efficient as possible, and I know Jeff is leading a group to look at efficiencies in our processes. So don't limit yourself just to this one. If you have experience in others, that would be helpful too.
I did have to leave for that. Have we all made our comments?
No.
Well, I don't know. I don't know how long I was out there. I thought maybe somebody was brief.
I guess at some point I would ask that, we've heard a lot of suggestions, and hopefully I know someone has kept a list of some of the language changes that we've heard, and if someone could read that back, that would be very helpful.
We've been typing it up, and we can put it up at the end.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, and interestingly, so we're done with speakers? Okay. The last speaker actually touched on that little typo that we've been talking about on section, gosh, I wrote this down at some point, E12, little e, 2D, which is the site design measures on page 61. I'm getting the sense that this requirement is a little misunderstood based on some of the comments received orally and in writing. And we went through this at the regional board on the MS for the phase 1 back in 2009, and I believe this is consistent with that approach, where we have a hierarchy with our site development requirements, where you retain if possible. And we talked about this at the workshop a little bit, that as a design engineer myself, I'm not going to design for complete retention without a fail-safe overflow. Sorry, I'm not going to put my license on the line on a full retention system, especially in a clay-dominated geology. And so, given that common sense that I believe actually is nested in here, and that's where I want to make clear, maybe give staff a chance to sort of back me up on that. But, we have a hierarchy. You retain, but then you have design features that, and you have basically a path to compliance here where, biotreatment is allowable past the design, parameters that we set forth. So I think there's some misunderstanding here. I don't think we're saying you shall retain everything in all cases, that there's already a pathway here to that sort of stepping back away from the ideal. But you have to demonstrate it. There has to be a rationale for it. So, you know, and then of course you picked up on the one or more bioretention facilities, those type of changes. So, does staff have any comment, John or Eric or Allie, Christine, ML? No. Okay. Oh, go.
That's exactly right.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and I think this is consistent with what we've been doing at the regional level too. Yeah, so I was keeping a rough count of all the different, you know, if I was going to make a motion on all the different changes I'd have to remember, and some came from Coastkeeper, some came from SEEB, you know, and all that stuff. So, and of course, CASQUA, sorry. So whenever you're ready to present that, I'm ready.
Do we have more commenters, or that's it? Okay. Yeah, can we take about 5 minutes to complete this then, and we'll put it up for
We
you?
only allow 3.
3?
No, we got 5 right there.
Janine, start the clock.
On your phone?
Yeah.
Which means it's probably in the buried section. So let me make a note to look for it. Well, Tom Mullin, we haven't done a Tom Mullin where, you know, this guy's not falling. I mean, I realize that, but I would have said, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily want to be potentially under that. The PTA still has this policy didn't quite use it. Yeah, we did something. Here's the one page of what we did. I know, but it's fair enough. Like they're worried. Right, exactly. And then even going down that, nobody raises their hand. Well, so let alone nobody do something for the clients. We asked this during the hearing. To your knowledge, has anyone enforced the process to say, on the board executive conference, they're like, Ventura, I haven't followed the invitation. We don't really like this. You know you don't really like this. We can find a common ground in between it. Everybody will be sort of okay with it.
Jonathan, are we taking a break or are we working? Oh, okay, I was just checking. I didn't know. There were just too many smiles over there. I thought, We don't allow smiling around here, you know, it's not right. Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're ready here. I really do believe that. If all of you could put a cap on it, please.
Okay. So we put together staff's proposed changes. First of which is to include all the changes that we've drafted in the change sheet number 1. The fact sheet language, which we discussed in the presentation earlier regarding petitions, and Emil, if you want to talk a bit more to this, feel free.
Only if you have questions, I think.
Okay. So I'll move along. Finding 39 revision gets at Bob Lucas and Sieb's revision to include LUPs instead of utilities. E7A.
We're going to call that the Bob Lucas provision, are
Yes,
we,
the
Ally?
Bob Lucas
He'd like that a lot.
This second revision here then would get at the idea of encouraging schools to use these materials that are place-based or experiential.
And I think is encouraged should be bolded.
Yeah, that's right.
But
So after
that's
shall.
the change after shall.
Okay. And then the same thing, so bringing over into the non-traditionals, while it already says is encouraged, we added materials that should also be bolded. So after experiential learning materials, that's new language. Okay. This comment then this is getting at the catch basin criteria and cleaning out maintenance. So any of the following criteria. E12F, so for hydromod, we'd like it to stay, but alternatively, it can be geomorphically based hydromod standard. And Eric, if you want to jump in at any time, feel free. But this is, it would have to be regional board approved executive officer, so there's that backstop. And then also, the procedures need to be designed to ensure that they don't cause a decrease in lateral bank and vertical channel bed stability in receiving stream channels. Okay, and second part in post-construction then would be the typo, so it's not one or, it should be one or more bioretention facilities. In attachment B, this is the non-traditional designees. We had some last-minute case-by-case regional board designations that we are going to take off. We're proposing to remove, and then after adoption, the regional boards can designate them if they'd like to.
And we're proposing to remove these because we couldn't verify that they had notice at this point. So the regional boards can add them later.
And then the last here, attachment G, revises the Napa River. This is for County of Sonoma for their TMDL, City of Sonoma, so it should be Sonoma Creek. And that is it, I think, there.
And just a reminder that when you do make a motion, I think you had wanted to add that you wanted the regional boards to report back annually to the state board on the watershed management zones and progress there.
I'd like to propose one more addition. On page 119, dispute resolution. I'm not sure where this might go, but I would like to specify some time period during which the executive director will need to take action on the request that is filed.
I think we could probably put it in after the executive officer of the regional water board will be provided an opportunity to respond. The state water board executive director or his designee will make a determination on the request within a
60 days.
60 days.
Tom? Okay.
Let me just write the language quickly and repeat it so we have it in the record. Did you have something drafted already, Michael, or?
And that covers my list.
Okay, so here's what I wrote. Can't write quite that fast. Following, the executive officer of the Regional Water Board will be provided an opportunity to respond, period. The executive director or his designee shall make a determination on the request within 60 days.
And Amel did a great job with that. The only thing I would suggest it would be his/her designee.
I should have caught that. Yeah.
Not hearing any other input from other board members, I will take a moment to thank and congratulate staff on your excellent, excellent effort, and make a motion for adoption of this permit with the change sheet and with all the additional changes just read into the record.
Second.
Thank
Oh,
you.
Michael is about to correct me.
And an additional motion, or an additional element, that the Water Board staff will report back annually on the assessment work.
Thank you.
You know, there's been a bit said today about me leaving. It's refreshing to me to be leaving and seeing young faces like I see in front of me that have worked their way through a very complicated issue. And, you know, to say it's perfect probably wouldn't be fair to you, because something of this magnitude that affects so many different people in so many different geographic areas and what have you is never going to be perfect. But I think you sincerely made the effort to respond to comments. Certainly there's going to be somebody out there whose comments didn't get addressed that are going to have their nose out of joint. But I think the things that you didn't address, you justified. To me, it's very comforting to sit on this side of the dais and have someone ask an Ally Dunn, a Christine, an Emel, or an Eric a question and not have them trot over to Michael Laufer and say, what am I supposed to say? It was nice seeing the comfort, and that's nothing against Michael. It's just nice seeing that you have the comfort in the work that you've done and have been engaged enough in it that you can answer those questions. And I think that's a real credit not only to all of you, but to this organization going forward, because, you know, as things go along and evolve and what have you, these issues aren't going to go away when people leave. And so, you know, my hat's off to you and those that aren't sitting up here that worked on it. I realize some of them aren't quite as young in the tooth as you, but, you know, it was a shining example of what we have to look forward here. So thank you.
I too would like to thank you, and I think, Christine, I only have one criticism, and that is when you made your list of thank yous, you were not on there, and you should have been, because it really is a group effort, and even if people who aren't who have retired. So I think that was it reflects that, and I'm actually amazed that someone thinks that this was a model process. So I'm wildly looking forward to the comments that we get from Kelly. And so again, thank you, and thank you to all those that are out there. And I assume, Jeff, that if there is legislation about the 218 issue, you will let Tom know, and you know, we will certainly be interested in investigating that. That's a governor's decision, but it's certainly something we will want to follow up on.
Felicia, are you commented out?
Okay, there is, okay. Oh, no, this is such an important issue. It requires so much collaboration to be successful. And I think the stakeholders and staff have put together a very workable product, and I know it was hard work, and I thank everyone's patience, you know, and good technical input to this process. many dimensions of complexity that I think we've gotten our arms around collectively, whether it's, statewide consistency, local innovation, natural variability, social variability. We can go on. And I think we've accomplished a lot. There's a lot of work to do based on implementing this, but I think we've brought up a big part of the state to the level of some of our more urban areas through this Phase 2 permit. And I think staff did a good job responding to comments. I wanted to support you on that effort, and thank everyone for your valuable input, and look forward to working with you closely on stewardship and implementation.
Great, ditto with my thanks. It was very nice to work with you through this process, and I know this is particularly, it's both important to the process that you do it well, but really important to us because we don't get to talk with each other. We just talk to you, and we don't get to talk to the stakeholders all the time during different windows. At least we can talk to them more often than we used to on these things with the change in the law. But it's a balancing act that you all do, and you did it rather deftly, and I really enjoyed working with you on it. And I thank the stakeholders for their comments, but also for working with staff and with the sincerity with which we're all just trying to figure out how to do this in the best way possible. I know that we could keep going, but I think we've gotten to a good place from a public policy standpoint, and we'll need to keep working through some of these issues. I know there's a leap of faith on both sides on some of these issues. You didn't get all the changes you might have liked, but this isn't set in stone forever, and we have a lot of work ahead of us. So thank you all. Moving this ball forward is the most important thing we can be doing at this point in time. So I'm glad you've done it so deftly. So thanks.
I guess this is it, huh? What do you think the outcome's going to be, girls? Call for the vote. All those in favor of things as modified and amended
And directed?
Directed. Signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? There you have it. Thank you very much. With that, we'll be adjourned.